Sales calls are bullshit. Not because selling is bad, but because the way that coaches sell in 2025, 2026 is like it's 1985. If you're still taking 90 minutes, 2 hours on a sales call, then you're not building trust. You're wasting your time. And that's the real problem, long or more sales calls isn't a high ticket strategy. It's just a symptom of a low trust system. Because meanwhile, the people who are winning, they're doing this. They're either doing short calls with a high success, like 50 plus percent close rate, or they're doing 10-minute confirmation calls where literally basically all they have to do is just send the payment link, or they're straight up just closing people over Instagram DMs. Now, why can they do that? Because their system does the selling before they even speak. Not a script, not manipulation, a system. And when you have that, then all prospects literally do is just say, send me the payment link. So, if you are someone who is tired of these kind of hostage length Zoom calls that make you want to claw your eyes out, then stick around here because in this video, I am breaking down why you don't need to be taking 90-minute sales calls or have a huge sales team and what all the top dogs of the industry are doing instead. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. But before we do that, let's just quickly talk about why you should even listen to me because just so that you know I'm not bullshitting. So this is some of the results that we've been able to get with our clients through email marketing. Here we have 10K in pipeline in 7 days, 5K in pipeline 1 day, we're on 10.5K pipeline 10 days, 10K pipeline 7 days. And then if you want to go into the metrics here, specific metrics like 95% open rates, 76% open rates, 70% open rates, 89% open rates, 76% open rates, and then click rates 19%, 41%, 22%, 28%, 8%. So there's plenty of proof. You can check out my Instagram if you want to see more. And on the topic of the system doing the selling for you that I was just talking about, when we started doing this for one of my clients, once he started building a real system, now obviously he was quite a short-term client, but his close rate in the time that we worked for him doubled when he had a real system. And nothing changed about the sales process or his sales calls. All that changed is that he had a proper system pre-call. And that's what allowed him to double his close rate. And I've done it for one of my clients. So this works. And it's what every single top dog in the industry, I'm talking about Iman Gatsi, Alex Hormozi, this is how all of them operate. So stick around because this is what I'm breaking down very, very in depth in the video. Now, let's first talk about the enemy, okay? And what I mean by the enemy is basically something that nobody really wants to admit. The old sales environment is complete doo-doo, okay? The industry teaches you that you need some 60 to 120-minute call. You need some script that was written by someone who sold weight loss in 2014 and enough emotional manipulation that you're doing to this innocent prospect that it can qualify as a Netflix crime show. But I want you to think about this, all right? Obviously, I'm joking, but I want you to think about this. If your process, your system, your emails, your content, etc., if it actually worked, then why would you need to spend 2 hours trying to convince someone that you're legit? Hold that thought because we'll come back to it. Because the real enemy is this outdated belief that I need to take sales calls in order to close people. That's a traditional model. That's what everyone copied because they thought there was no alternative. But that's just legacy thinking from a time where 1, attention was cheap, 2, trust was automatic, and 3, buyers weren't drowning in coaches selling the same script. It doesn't have to be that way anymore because when you rely on calls as your main conversion vehicle, i.e. the thing that converts people and eventually gets them into your program, then you're basically just admitting that your system isn't doing the warming, the selling, and the qualifying. So you have to do it manually on the phone. And there's a huge cost in that. Every long sales call that you're taking, it drains time, it drains energy, and there's no guarantee that the person closes with the 50 different objections that they have. You know that feeling when the prospect hops on a call 10 minutes late, or they just want to know the price, or they aren't making a decision now. Yeah, that's the trust deficit in your system showing. The system's failure, because your system should be doing all the qualifying, selling, and warming up. So The enemy really is dependency. Dependency on sales calls to create the trust your ecosystem should have already built. And once you break that dependency, then everything in your business gets lighter, gets faster, and gets way more profitable, which is exactly what I'm about to break down. All right, so let's just slow down here for a second because I really want you to hear what I'm about to say. This is the core thesis of the entire video, okay? And I know we're getting into it pretty early, but I don't want to waste any more time. This is the big idea that will literally change the way that your business operates and how much freedom you have, because it's done so for my clients, and it's how every single 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneur at the top of the game is operating. All right? You don't need to take more or better sales calls. You need a system that makes sales calls unnecessary. Because this is the shift that every top coach has already been quietly making or is making now. Building a business on marketing-based conversion rather than sales-based conversion. The online business world has this kind of unspoken assumption that the call is the sale. Like the call is where the magic happens. Like the call is where the trust happens and the call is where the close happens. But what most people don't know is that by the time someone books a call with you, their decision is basically already made. Not 100%, but like 70, 80%. That's why you get those, oh, I'm not making a decision today at the beginning of the call. It's just the way that humans operate when it comes to buying stuff, especially from people who they don't completely trust. People decide emotionally before they ever enter a logical environment. They decide based on familiarity, based on alignment, based on authority, based on resonance, based on trust, based on whether your worldview makes sense to them, based on whether you're the antidote to their specific pain. And none of that happens on the call. It happens days, weeks, months before the call. The call is just kind of like the final handshake where you just collect final payment and you answer a couple clarifying questions, or at least that's what it can and should be. And that's why the entire idea of I need sales calls to close people is such a lie. Not because sales calls don't work, but because calls are not the main conversion mechanism that we think they are. And even when you do close people on calls, I promise you, the call didn't sell them. Everything before the call sold them. Because the industry has never taught you how to optimize the before, the system. They only taught you how to drag someone through a 90-minute conversation like it's some kind of emotional surgery. Because I might have worked in 2016, but of course now the market is different. Buyers are different, expectations are different. People have seen everything, okay? People have seen the scripts, the frameworks, the persuasion tactics, the objection handling charts. The old playbook is cooked. People are immune. And that is where the real core thesis comes in. And that's that modern coaching businesses aren't built on sales calls. They're built on trust maximization systems. A trust-based system does 3 calls before you ever speak to the prospect. It, number one, pre-warms them so they know about your frameworks, your offers, your results, etc. They know about all of it. Number 2, it pre-qualifies them so they have money and they want to make a decision now. And number 3, it pre-sells them so they actually are sold on both the transformation and offer, but also you as a person. Now, when that system is in place, then what happens? The call shrinks in time, resistance disappears, the emotional tension vanishes, because everything you waste time doing on the call, building trust, urgency, handling objections, is done before in your marketing system through an ecosystem of content, emails, etc. And this is why the top coaches, the ones who you see scaling, the ones who you look up to, the ones who aren't burnt out, and the ones who aren't on Zoom for 50 hours a week, they don't have a bigger sales team, or they aren't better at closing most of the time. They just built systems that pre-sell. I mean, look at someone like Iman Gadzhi. Does he ever tell you that you need to book in a call with him in order to buy his course? No, because he builds trust on a massive scale, and it allows him to make so much money, and it allows him to not have a big sales team, not have that much overhead, but still make crazy bank because he's built a business focused on marketing-based conversion rather than sales-based conversion, and he pre-sells people. In a pre-sold environment, the call becomes like, if you do a call, for example, which in most of your guys' situation you will do because you don't have the audience or the authority yet to close people in the DMs, but for most of you, it literally can just be a 15-20 minute call where nothing crazy happens. There's no pressure, and all you have to do is go through some basic stuff and just send the payment link. Now, this leads to the second part of the thesis, which is if your system is strong enough, then people don't even need the call. Then they close in the DMs, and this is what I just mentioned. And I know that's going to sound wild for a lot of you who are used to those 2-hour sales calls on Candidly, but people like Nick Setting, for example, he literally closes 13 grand packages in the DMs. 13 grand packages in the DMs because he's built such massive authority and he has such a trust maximizing ecosystem. And it's even common knowledge that billionaires, if you've ever watched those interviews with billionaires online, these guys make purchases of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And they literally say very openly, they do that over text. They make purchases of hundreds of millions of dollars over text. Because a sales call does not equate to buying. Trust in you as the person. No, trust in number one, you as the person, and number two, the mechanism, and that it's actually going to get them the best result is what equates to buying. And you can do that without a sales call. Literally just with a simple ecosystem of content and emails. You don't need anything else. And that's the entire game, Once you understand that, you don't need to hire 50 more closers and setters, but you can start focusing on the only thing that actually matters, and that's how do I engineer an environment where people walk into the call pre-sold, pre-warmed, and pre-qualified. That's it. That's the reason sales calls are BS. Not because calls don't work, but because the system that leads to them matters 100 times more. Okay, so now that you understand why you don't need to be hopping on 2-hour sales calls to be closing clients, I think it's also important that you also understand that you need to have a good system pre-call, pre-sales call. But what does that system actually look like? Now, let me break this down. An ecosystem is a loop of trust, okay? Your Instagram doesn't exist by itself, your YouTube doesn't exist by itself, your emails, stories, everything. They all connect, kind of like organs in one body. The goal is by the time someone hits your DMs, they already get you, they already trust you, and they've already decided that they want in. They're just basically waiting for you to send the payment link, or they might just have a couple questions, or you might just have to handle one objection or just a couple of things, and then the close is there. It's effortless. That's the ecosystem effect. It's not about more calls or getting better at sales. It's about more trust generated pre-contact. Now, this is the most important part, all right? When your ecosystem is built properly, then attention becomes owned. And this is where 99% of coaches completely screw up. They build their whole business on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever. All right, they think they're Kylie Jenner out here. And the problem with that is you have zero control on social media. And if you have no control, then you have no predictability, you have no scalability, you have no freedom, and also you can get kicked off, you can be shadow banned. There are just so many external factors affecting your success and control that it's a liability to build a business on social media. That's why owned attention through an email list or a community is so powerful, because when someone's on your email list or inside your newsletter or part of a private community, you're not fighting for their attention. You already have it. On social media, you are fighting for attention, and that's where sales calls die. Not because you're some alpha closer, but because people already trust your voice. They've heard it for weeks, months in your ecosystem. And when your ecosystem does nurture someone across different touch points, from story to post to email to video, then they're not meeting you or building rapport for the first time on a call, but they're serious buyers. They're like, yeah, I've seen your content, I've read your emails, I know your frameworks, I know your mechanism, how do I pay? That's what the owned attention and ecosystem model does. It builds such depth and such trust in the relationship over time that people just buy and they gravitate towards you. And the thing is, once you have that ecosystem in place, the rules of business literally flip. Instead of chasing leads, you start curating conversations. Instead of proving your value on calls, your ecosystem's already done that. Instead of being scared of objections, you don't get any objections because your content and emails handle all of them for you. That's how you turn 2-hour sales calls with a 30% close or 20% close rate into 30-minute sales calls with a 50% close rate, or 10-minute calls with a 100% close rate, or DM closes. That's how you completely change the way that your business operates. And I promise you, if you implement this and you take action on this, I promise you, you will see results. Because this is how every single person at the top of the industry operates, and it's what I do for all of my clients. Now, to finish, I need to talk about something very, very important just to really wrap it up and so you guys can really understand this. And that is that attention, as we know, attention, the currency of this economy, it doesn't die, it just moves. Attention never dies, it just moves, okay? The creators and coaches who win are the ones who control where the attention goes. For example, if your attention is solely on TikTok or Instagram, whatever, then it's gone the second that your video flops. Which, by the way, you have no control over. The algorithm controls that. But if your attention lives inside your list, your newsletter, your Discord, your ecosystem, then it stays, it compounds, it scales trust. That's why the system isn't just really about automation, but rather it's about ownership. Because once you own attention, then you can communicate on your own terms, not the algorithms. And when you can communicate consistently on your own terms, then you don't need to 2 hours to convince someone. You've already been convincing them every day through your ecosystem, so they gravitate towards you. So the real flex isn't really about having the smoothest sales call pitch. It's building a world where people sell themselves before you ever show up. And that's what this owned attention model does. It replaces sales energy with trust energy. It replaces big sales teams and hundreds of unclosed sales calls with no sales team, DM closes, and easy, effortless sales calls with a super high success rate. And that's the future, okay? Because trust at scale doesn't come from scripts, it comes from systems that speak for you. That's real leverage. That's the real way to build coaching businesses in this new age. And it's what's going to give you real freedom and actually allow you to build a business that you really love. Because that's what everyone wants at the end of the day from business. Everyone wants to be free. So if you follow this, I promise you, I guarantee you, if you focus on building a system on trust and you focus on owning that attention, then you'll have so much leverage, so much ease in closing people, and you will scale so easily. You'll have so much freedom, and I promise you, your life will completely change. And that's the full breakdown on why sales calls are pretty much BS and why you should be effortlessly, easily closing people on sales calls if you're taking them, or literally just DM closing people. Now, if you do want help building out the trust system and want someone to completely handle the entire owned attention email marketing system 100% for you, then there's a link down below to work with us where we basically A to Z handle the entire email marketing process. But if you're not ready for that right now, then just click this video next.